Hello everyone and welcome back to Raquel Teaches. In today's lesson, I'm going to teach you how to use the tools provided by W3C to validate both HTML and CSS code. So let's get started. So we're going to start by looking at a very simple web page that I've created here, and I'm going to also share the code editor so you can see what this code looks like. It's a very simple HTML file and a very simple CSS file. And so you may notice some things that don't look right, and that's intentional because I want you to see what happens when we use the validator. And so these are the two files that I'm going to be showing you how to validate using the tools provided. So when we go back to the validator, and I'm sorry, this is how the sample page looks like. There are two validators that are provided. One is the HTML validator, which you see here, and the other one is the CSS validator, which you see here. When you are validating files, there are different options for uploading the file to the validation service. So if the web page is already published, you can input the URL here by using the tab that says Validate by URI. In this case, our sample web page hasn't been published. So what I'm going to be using is the option that allows the file to be uploaded so that it can be tested. And so when you're working on a web page project and you still haven't published it, this is how you can test your files so you can see whether or not they passed a validation check and if there are any errors that need to be corrected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first test the HTML file for this sample web page by uploading it. So I've clicked on the tab for Validate by File Upload, and I'm just going to click on Choose File. And I'll have to navigate to where the files are located. So in this instance, it's already opening the folder that I'm working out of, but in your case, you may have to still navigate to wherever it is that you have your project file saved. So since I'm already in the folder I need to be in, I'm going to click on the HTML file to select it, and I'm going to click the Open button. And now we see that the file has been inserted here in the File field, right? And so now that that file has been inserted, I can click on the Check button, and it will check that file and let me know what is found upon the inspection. So let's click on Check and see what happens, right? And so we see here that it provides essentially a report, right? It starts to give different kinds of messages with regards to what was found. So we see in this example here, the first message we see is a warning message, right? Where it says, consider adding a lang attribute to the HTML start tag. And when I look back at the file, of course, I have not included some of the basic things that you've learned throughout this course, right? Because this is just for demonstration purposes. But it is right for this validator to note that as far as its checks to see that it is missing that lang attribute, okay? But then it has other error messages, right? It says that the character encoding was not declared, right? And it gives a message or recommendation on what to use, right? If there's a different character encoding, then you should include one. And then another error that I have in my HTML file where it says start tag seen without seeing a doc type first, right? So of course, this is one of the missing attributes that I did not include in my HTML file here, right? So when we see that, we know that, okay, these are the things I need to go and fix in the HTML file to make sure that it is code that is valid and it's gonna work best in all types of browser environments once this web page is published, okay? So that's how you use the HTML validator. And then the CSS validator works pretty much the same way. And again, since this web page is not published, I'm gonna use the tab that allows me to upload the CSS file. I'm gonna click on Choose File. I'm gonna select my CSS file this time, click on Open, and then click on the Check button again. And once again, in this instance, it didn't find any errors. Now, it's interesting that it didn't find any errors, and this is the reason why I say it's interesting. When we look at this styles CSS document, Notice that I've included a style for the title element, even though the title element is not something that can be styled, right? So that should be an error. And yet when we look at the CSS validation output results, it's saying congratulations, no error found. So while these validators do a very good job of catching some obvious mistakes or missing information, it may not be 100% foolproof, right? So what you want to make sure of is that even though you're using the validator, you still need to take the time to review your code yourself and make sure that there isn't anything in there that shouldn't be there. And you want to make sure that if there is, you remove it, or if there's any other errors you notice, that you fix it, right? So when you're doing this assignment, yes, you're going to be using the validator, but you are also expected to make sure that both your HTML files and your CSS files are correct outside of whatever may or may not be found with the validation tools. Okay, so that is how you use the HTML and CSS validator tools provided by W3C. Hope this was helpful.